Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 7th. It's currently 7:01. Before I get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meetings by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver: Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. So could I call the meeting to order? Could I get someone to move the recommendation for approval of the agenda? Moved. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Matters raised here for council's consideration should be constructively focused on agenda items only. Please limit comments to 2 minutes and save any questions for question period later in the meeting. Any public input? No? Okay. Delegations. We have a couple delegations. So first off is Paul Fripp for our 2023 financial statements, report on our financial results for the year. Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Paul Fripp. I'm an audit partner with BDO Canada LLP. I'm here today to present the draft financial statements as well as our draft independent auditor's report for council's consideration and to pass the motion to approve the financial statements in draft. No, I'll start here. All right. I have to point over there. Okay, so I'll start out with the independent auditor's report. This is in draft until council approves the financial statements, at which time we will conduct some finalization steps and provide our independent auditor's report. However, this is substantially the form of audit opinion that we anticipate providing to the village following that process. It's an unmodified or unqualified audit opinion. You might also know it as a clean audit opinion. It's the same form of audit opinion that's been provided to the village in the past. Just going over the statement of financial position, you'll notice that net financial assets has gone down by about $3.5 million. That's because the village has used its financial assets to invest in infrastructure that we see around us here today. The notable changes here is a decrease in cash by about $2 million, and then you'll also notice that there was a new debt facility that was taken out in the year of about $2.5 million. I mentioned that those sources of cash was used to acquire tangible capital assets. There was net additions to tangible capital assets in the year of about $9.6 million. That number that you see, $70 million, is the total amount of infrastructure that the village has invested over its history, basically. The total accumulated surplus that the village has at the year ended December 31st, 2023 is about $79.5 million. The majority of that is invested in infrastructure that has already been spent. Moving to the statement of operations, you'll notice that revenues are up by about $2 million. That's the result of grant funding received in the year, the Growing Communities Fund in particular, as well as community amenity contributions of $450,000. Expenses were in line with the financial plan. As a result, the annual surplus is coming out to about $4.9 million, up from $3.2 million last year, bringing the ending accumulated surplus for the year at, again, $79.5 million. Okay, that broad brush strokes the results of the village for the year ended December 31st, 2023. To council.
Yeah, any comments, questions? Council Weber.
I'll just make one comment. Page 14, the surplus. Just hang on a second. Let me find page 14. Well, 14 and 15. Our net financial cash at the end of the year, $8.2 million. I think it's a healthy position to be in, considering we've just finished this village hub. But, you know, $8.2 million, that could be used up fairly quickly in case of an emergency or something. But nice to see that we are at a healthy surplus position. Just a comment.
Good. Any other comments or questions? I just, one comment. Reading through the report, I saw that the report was free from any material misstatements, so you're not aware of any fraud or anything affecting the village?
Throughout the course of our testing, we did not detect any instances of actual suspected or alleged fraud, and neither was any brought to our attention by management or council.
Good. Okay, thank you. Well, the amended recommendation would be that the 2023 financial statements be received and amended to, how is it going to change, or that they simply be received. So could I get someone to move that? Moved. Second. Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Paul. We now have the Tri-Cities Community Action Team. Roxanne Saxon and Samantha Chong to present on the Tri-Cities Community Action Team and their response to the emergency health crisis and toxic drugs. Welcome.
Oh, don't dear.
Is the blue, you can push the top of the,
Yes.
there we go. Welcome.
Okay, there's a clicker. Forward. Okay. There, perfect.
Okay. All right. My name's Roxanne Saxon.
If you
Sorry.
can-
Yep.
Yeah.
My name's Roxanne Saxon. I'm the program coordinator for the Tri-Cities Community Action Team.
My name is Samantha Chong. I am a member of the Tri-Cities Community Action Team, and I am a public health nurse in the Tri-Cities supporting the toxic drug response. Thank you for having us.
So the presentation today, we're going to just go over a little bit of the history of where the opioid crisis came from, how the TCAT came about, who we are, what we do, and then the breakdown of what we do.
I'm going to ask if you can get a little closer to the microphone
Yep.
so that the people online can hear you as well.
Okay, and then so other opportunities, that's a huge difference. Thank you.
Yeah.
The persons with lived experience opportunities, and then a year of kind of what we've done in the last review.
Good.
So just to give a little bit of history of what is bringing us to today, in 2016, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions mandated a response to the opioid crisis and actually declared it a crisis on April 14th. Out of this, directives were given to provinces. The BC Ministry of Health provided funding. They created what was called the OERC, or the Overdose Emergency Response Center, and this center focused on 4 key areas: so saving lives, ending stigma, building a network of service, and addressing the social determinants of health. From the OERC, the community action teams were born. They were given the funding that was given to the provinces was the CATs were given grants to provide focused action to local communities around the opioid response. Okay, I'm up again. So this slide, it speaks to what the current statistics are in BC, and today BC Coroner's report came out with new stats to the end of March 31st. So there, I'll use the updated stats so you have the most current information. So last year, 2023, there were over 2,500 suspected unregulated drug deaths, which is the highest number recorded since the declaration of the crisis. In March of this year, we had 192 deaths in BC, which is an 8% increase over February. This equates to about 6.2 lives lost a day. Statistically, when we're looking at who is dying, the statistics show that 70% of the people dying are men between the ages of 30 and 59. 70 to 74% actually. And over 80% of deaths are occurring inside. So when we talk about inside, we are talking about primarily in private residences, social housing, shelters, other indoor sites, could be a bathroom, inside, anything inside. And only 12% of deaths are occurring outside. One death has occurred at an overdose prevention site since the inception of overdose prevention sites. And I just wanted to call attention to the BC emergency health stats, because this really speaks to what a drain on resources this crisis is. So in 2023, BC paramedics responded to over 42,000 calls for suspected overdose, which is about 116 calls a day. On June 21st, 2023, there was a new record set where BC EHS received 221 calls. While I can't speak directly to the deaths locally, that is confidential information. We're small communities, so I'm not allowed to share that information. But what I will say is that the trends in the Tri-Cities, so Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, Coquitlam, Anmore, Belcarra, are very similar to what we're seeing in BC. The stat that is more distressing, perhaps, is that deaths are primarily occurring in private residence. They're not occurring on the streets. So upwards to 84% are occurring in people's homes when they're alone. Okay. Moving on.
So we put this here. We don't always see what needs to be seen, just as a reminder that as important as the statistics are, these are human beings, lives that are lost, but also families that have been affected. So just a reminder. All right. Okay. So the Tri-Cities Community Action Team was formed in 2017, and we have collaborative action members, local service providers, community members, city staff, families who have been affected, all coming together to raise awareness, to deliver interactive education, addressing stigma, creative visuals, and then connecting resources and bridging connections within the community.
These are just a few of our partners. So Naloxone, Share Community Services, Safe and Sound, Access Youth, Mom Stop the Harm. And here you just see pictures from some of the events that we have attended. First one's May Day Parade, Recovery Days in New West last year. We do team building, suicide prevention awareness, and the bottom right was our Socktober event where we were collecting socks and warm clothing for underhoused and vulnerable populations.
So one of the things we do is interactive education. So on the right, we built a Jeopardy board, and that this is what we deliver to community at community events. So it has mental health questions, stigma, harm reduction, substance use, just kind of at every level, we change it to who's in front of us. So the little ones up to seniors and anybody in between, and then naloxone training.
I'm just going to ask if you can sort of wrap it up a little bit. We do have a bit of a time
Okay,
limit on our
sorry.
delegations.
Okay. I won't take time with stigma. I think everybody knows what stigma is, and we're working really hard to bring awareness to this crisis, and that these are people, beloved family members that are dying what's most important is that, let's see, where can I get to here? That we're available to support communities and whatever kind of support. Maybe I'll just skip right along to that. What can we do to support your community? So we're available for questions, for events. We are very mindful of our audience. We tailor what we do. So as a public health nurse, I'm very aware that we need to start addressing this to prevent future generations from suffering the same fate. So how are we going to do that? Mental health, resilience, social emotional learning, all of the things to build strength in our children so they can get to the other side without having to be in this crisis. I think we'll just wrap it up at that.
Yeah. Any comments and questions from Council? Councillor Cryer.
Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. And you ask what you can do, and I think what you're doing right now is very important. The education and making people aware. I remember when the overdose cat was formed in 2017. I was at the homeless table coordinating that, and I was so grateful that you came to be, because all of the overdose crisis was starting and it was all falling to the homeless table, which added to the stigma that, you know, those were the people that were overdosing and dying. And you can see from your statistics that that is not true.
It's not true.
It is not true. Overdose protection sites, safe injection sites, that's not where people are dying. They're dying in private homes. And they're people just like us. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's not a street problem. It's an everyone problem.
Yes.
It's an everyone problem. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here. If anyone ever needs to get a hold of them, I have their coordinates handy.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Councillor Webering.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. I really admire your passion for it. I can just hear it in your voice. It's funny what you say about the stigma. A good friend of mine is a coroner, and it's shocking how many private homes she goes to, seemingly normal people. A lot of young men in the construction industry, recently divorced. They're living in a basement suite, and they die alone, and they die.
Yes.
So I think it's very important what you do. We do have a community day in September. I think it'd be great for you guys to set up a table if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Maybe the village could reach out to you, or you could stay in touch with the village, because I think what you do is very, very valuable.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from comments? No. Thank you both, and thank you again for all that you do. I really appreciated the presentation, and it's very eye-opening, so to speak. So thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for having us.
We'll now move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 16th. Could I get someone to move those minutes? Adoption? Second. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes of the special council meeting held on April 18th. Adoption. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We're now on to the consent agenda. Any council member would like to remove something may do so at this time. Any? No? Okay. Could I get someone then to move the consent agenda? Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now move over to legislative reports. We have a couple of infill zoning amendment bylaws. Mr. Boyd, do you want to speak to both of these? We'll do 9A first.
Thank you, Mayor. Come on. Right. Show him the right one. Okay, thank you, Your Before you tonight is, as you affirmed there, that we are looking at a couple of infills tonight. This one in particular is bylaw 695-2024, and this is in relation to 110 Hemlock Drive, which is just outside the door here. So staff have reviewed the application against infill policy 61. We have found that the proposed rezoning meets the requirements of the policy, as in it has not been subdivided in the past 5 years. The parcel is 1 acre. The existing land has adequate area for development. The parcel of land fronts the existing road right-of-ways that contain all the required infrastructure. And the property has over 50 meters of frontage. I just wanted to point out one particular point here within the report, that if we go to the map contained within the bylaw, you'll notice that the Marmary Lane road right-of-way is currently shown in the old location, while it's actually the current legal location. But staff are in the process of updating the road right-of-way to actually go upon where the actual road is now. So in the future, there will be additional road frontage for that lot as well. So from all intents and purposes, it will look the way it is right now, and it will have the legal road right-of-way in front of it as well. So with the consideration of that, staff, would you like me to make the recommendation?
Yeah, and well, let's get it on the table. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got a couple comments.
The staff recommend that the first and second reading be given to Anmore zoning bylaw amendment number 695-2024, and that staff be directed to set a public hearing for Anmore zoning bylaw amendment number 695-2024.
Could I get someone to move that recommendation? Moved. Second, I'll open up for discussion. Discussion? No? Mr. Boyd, I was noticing both of these properties, and again, the 110, and my comments will also apply to 120, because I think this is truly the intent of what infill was all about. Being able to, subdivide a home to be able to let other family members possibly come in. When the infill policy was put forth, there was a recommended CAC. But in lieu of the CAC, or a portion thereof, was trail connections. So we have two properties that are side by side that we could possibly create a trail from Hemlock that would take us right into Spirit Park. Has that been looked at in this example?
No, it hasn't, Mayor. We could look at that as staff as we review the CAC contribution. If this gets a reading, that we could talk to the applicants and see what that would look like.
Yeah, and the reason I noticed that on like 1029 Ravenswood, right beside 1029 Ravenswood, there's a small path that then connects this back trail network over to Ravenswood, and I think this would be a great opportunity with both of them coming at the same time. It wouldn't be much land that would have to be given up, but it would be quite a great accessible pathway back and forth. So I'm certainly going to support it, but I certainly think we should certainly look at this opportunity, because it was, correct me if I'm wrong, from the task force, it was something that was, talked about. So good. Okay, thanks. Any other further comment? I'll call it. Oh, sorry, Councillor Trowbridge.
Your point. Sorry. To your point, as the Parks and Rec Committee, we were looking at the acquisition of land or some kind of incentive for people to give up pathways. So I'm just hoping that'll be part of the discussion.
Good, yeah. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 9B, 120 Hemlock Drive.
Thank you, Your Worship. Same again. We've reviewed this parcel of land against policy 61. It meets all the requirements, and it has not been subdivided in the past 5 years. It is 1 acre parcel. The land has adequate development, and the parcel of land fronts the existing road right-of-ways, and it has full road right-of-way, 44 meters on both the north and the south in this case.
Good. Okay, could I get someone to move the recommendation? Move.
I've not read the recommendation.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
The recommendation from staff that the first and second reading be given to Anmore zoning bylaw amendment 696-2024, and that staff be directed to set a public hearing for Anmore zoning bylaw amendment 696-2024.
Someone to move? Second? Any further discussion? I would just like the same comments to be passed on to that as well. Like I said, with both of them beside each other, it could be a great opportunity. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 11, new business development variance permit request on 3185 Sunnyside Road. Report dated May 3rd from Mr. Boyd. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you. Me again. So first off, I want to make just a note that this is the new planner. Josh is actually first report to council, so he would have been here tonight if we had a prior engagement. So I just want to say that welcome Josh to the council chamber and making this report, but I'm doing it in his stead tonight. So generally, the background to this development variance permit is that the applicant has been made to vary the inside yard setback from 5 meters to 0.8 meters to accommodate an accessory building in the rear of the yard of 3185 Sunnyside Road in the RS1 zone. The construction of a roof in addition to the north side of the existing building was initiated without a building permit, and the staff have issued a stop work order to halt further construction. Upon inspection, staff noted that the building permit was not found, and the existing accessory building, which the applicant has said to be in place approximately 15 years. So the foundations of the existing accessory building encroach 4.2 meters into the interior side of the setback, and the applicant is seeking a DVP to preserve the existing foundation and placement of the building, proceed with a building permit for the entirety of the building and structure. So just to provide some clarity, this typically would be referred to as illegally non-conforming to some degree, but because an addition has been made to this existing structure, we kind of classify it as the issue has been exacerbated, and so therefore as staff we've reviewed it against all of our bylaws, and it's been shown up that the side setbacks are actually not in compliance with the requirements of the zone. So in order for the applicant to do any work to the building, we must receive a DVP at this point in time to allow them to continue with any kind of construction. Now, I'd note that the existing structure, we're not asking for it to be removed. It is if they continue with what is currently on the work stop order for the building permit, they will only be allowed to continue with that work if a DVP is given. Okay. So typically in the past, staff have come to council and kind of said, hey, can we have a development variance permit? And it was pretty straightforward. This one is a little bit more complicated because there are a number of easements on this zone as well. So we thought it was applicable to come to council with a little bit more background before we just say, hey, will you give us a development variant permit? So on this particular title, there is a restricted covenant for a watercourse protection. This is generally a covenant that's put on title in the past, a carte blanche title when you're within a watercourse. And so this is a covenant that was put on title way back when the subdivision was created. So provincial legislation actually kind of overrides this a little bit more, that if you're doing any work within and around a watercourse, you have to do what's called a wrapper-R, which makes sure you do a certain applicable environmental reviews and requirements. So the applicant will be required to do that if they go anywhere near this RAR application. Another one is there is an existing easement between Lot 1 and Lot 2. That is in favor of, it's not in favor of anyone, sorry. It's actually on title for both because it's a shared access previously between the two properties, and it may contain pipes that service to the property. So we would need to get a legal agreement from that other landholder before we could issue a DVP. And then finally, there is another access agreement in favor of just the village that we could review if it was just solely for access for lands beyond, but the lands beyond now have been subdivided elsewhere, so there's access to the parcels beyond, so staff can review and see if we want to dissolve that that easement in the future. It's not really part of this DVP, but we could look to dissolve it if we wanted to. So in light of this, for Section 499 of the Local Government Act, we have to send the properties to the council's intent to consider the DVP, and then give at least 10 days prior to the adoption of the resolution to issue the DVP. So the recommendation on the table would read that staff be authorized to issue notice of council's consideration of the DVP 2024-01 to the affected property.
Could I get someone to move the motion? Moved. Second. Any discussion? Okay, Councillor Weberink.
So, sorry, I'm looking at page 77.
Yep.
And obviously, I'm trying to, what's the existing building and what's the new part that's being built on that the stop work order was applied to?
So currently, you'll see that the building is kind of outlined. It's the southern portion of the building, a bit of a dash line on the top. It's my understanding that there is an extension being put on it with a roof and whatnot, which would require a building permit. It's an extension of the accessory building.
So that would extend into the easement?
No, it's actually going the other direction. So it's the
Over the
existing
boundary.
building, which is within the easement.
Oh, that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So what's already kind of in the easement has been there for a while.
Yes, for 15 years plus.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so to be clear, you said the part that's in the RAR must be fixed?
If any construction happens within the RAR, that they must now go back and get new environmental reports and get the requirements from the province before they can continue with any construction. Now,
Okay.
this is a bit of a grey area because I believe the piece that requires the building permit section is actually outside of that area, but the existing, all of the building is within it. So staff will be reviewing it to see if it's applicable, that they need to have the wrapper
Yeah.
attached to it.
The reason I'm asking is, based on this map, the 3 meters above the top of bank
Mhm.
sort of bisects diagonally directly through the existing structure already.
Yeah.
So if they have to deal with that, they have to remove that structure. Or get permission from the province to allow the structure to stay there.
Correct. Now, this is where it becomes a bit of a strange one, is that what they're trying to do right now is actually outside of that.
I understand that.
Yeah. So I don't believe the province would consider that the work that's happening is outside of it. I don't believe the province would then say the existing building must meet these requirements. That makes sense. Because
You know,
the work
no,
that's
I
happening
understand.
is outside of it.
But again, like, this is a very weird thing, because not only is it right up against the neighbor, it's covering most of the easement. And like, I just look at the future, somebody else buys the property and they go, well, I don't want this thing here. Like, can you remove part of the building and leave the foundation so that the building is offending? Like, it's a weird variance for me, and I don't know that issuing a variance is the right solution long-term for new property owners on both sides, which is my concern. So, as you said, you have to notify the residents to the south. You could do something a little bit more crazy, is you just modify the boundary of the property, like you do a change of boundaries of the lots, and then you solve the issue immediately because the setbacks are all fine. Right, that's another solution to this.
I mean, as staff, yes, I suppose we could review that with the applicant. We haven't, so I'd be reluctant to say it is an option or not at this point in time.
Yeah, it's a very hard one. I don't have a feel for how such a thing should go into the future. They may be friendly neighbors now, but they might not be friendly neighbors in 25 years.
So just to make a comment on that, that is where on the second piece of this easement, we as staff will be looking for some kind of acknowledgement from the neighbor that this is
To the
okay,
south, yeah.
and that it's then on title, it's on our records that this person previously that they're named in the easement has said, yes, we will allow you to do this.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, Chris, it may be naive, but if the
We
current
can't hear you.
neighbor,
You have to closer to the mic, yeah.
closer to the mic, if the current neighbor is consulted and the current neighbor is to sell that property, is the first neighbor's acceptance attached to the property in perpetuity?
Yeah, the easement runs with the title, but this acceptance letter, unless it was put through a legal instrument such as a covenant between them two, then the answer would be no. So maybe that could be something that this could be sorted out between the two neighbors, as in, I will accept this change as long as it's placed on title.
Yeah, so it'd be there as a covenant.
Yes,
Yeah,
and would follow the
because-
property.
Because it's not just how this existing variance to the easement works, but it's the neighboring property that's more my concern.
I think, Chris, if we move this forward, I think you have a lot of checks and balances that you're going to be able to do through the municipality to make sure that both owners, there'll be something on title so that there'll be something in perpetuity in that, so, in moving it forward, so. Yeah, please, Councillor Reverend.
You know, I certainly am not in favor of, telling the owner to take this building down by any means. I mean, it exists, let it stand till it falls down. But I really struggle with a building that doesn't comply on two boundaries, and then we're allowing renovation on it. I think we have to kind of set a standard that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if the building were to exist and then it falls down and then you rebuild it in the proper location, I think that's long-term the way to do it. I think it puts the village in a bad position that we're issuing building permits on buildings essentially that don't comply.
So that is the exact reason for the DVP, and making sure that it is a legal instrument
Yeah.
to ensure that it is on title, that it's just attached to the success rebuilding, and if it were to get demolished, then the DVP demolishes with it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit more comfortable with that.
Councillor Cryer.
Okay, this is a new situation for me. So the recommendation is not to approve it, it's to give consideration to, so you will do more due diligence?
Yes.
So we could just stop it, but we don't need to do that. We just need to make sure multiple things have been looked into with the neighbors, future. Is that correct?
Correct. So one of the things that I'm hearing from council tonight is you are concerned about the neighbors, and there must be some legal instrument attached to it to ensure that the neighbor is taken care of, and that can be a consideration that you only grant the DVP if such a title is put there, because you as council have the power to say yes or no, and if you are to give a yes, you can put the stipulations of what you'll say yes to.
Yeah, it just feels a little muddy right now. Like unfair, like Councillor Weveringer could have been you to the neighbor, like without taking their best interest. Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay, see no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to Anmore Community Hub facility use, report dated May 3rd from our Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Elright.
Thank you. So as part of the newly constructed Anmore Community Hub, there are community spaces which could be utilized as an amenity for the community and or as a source of rental income through rental of the space. Additionally, some current policies that exist regarding facilities and the adjacent Spirit Park would need to be updated to align with this building. So staff is seeking direction on criteria to incorporate into a new facility policy and fees for rental. So in terms of the policy framework, there's currently two existing policies that are quite outdated related to the old ATCO trailers and also Spirit Park. Now, with the integration of this building going right into Spirit Park, we would anticipate that some users would like to use both spaces. So we'd like to consider policy framework that sort of incorporates the whole area. Some of those things that we would want to set out in policy are things like, minimum age requirements, booking deposits, advanced booking dates, restrictions related to quiet time, smoking, alcohol use, cancellation criteria. There's a whole bunch of things that we would want to incorporate. So staff is recommending that the two existing policies be rescinded and a new policy be created to incorporate best practice criteria established by other communities. Additionally, should council wish to waive fees or reduce fees for certain community-based organizations, identification of those organizations or creation of a process by which those organizations could apply to council for some type of fee exemption would need to be incorporated into that policy at the same time. In terms of rental fees, staff has done some research on rental fees of similar spaces on other community buildings. Those are, I won't go through them line by line, but if anybody has any questions about them, they're sort of sectioned out into rooms that are alike in size and composition in terms of the rooms that we have available here at the hub. So currently, all we have set out in terms of fees, we have a parking lot rental fee, we have the community Spirit Park rental fee, which is limited to residents only at this time. And then we have a facility rental fee for the old trailers, which was $20 an hour, which is definitely out of line with what rental fees this facility could garner. Additionally, in terms of so staff would recommend that we update the Anmore fees and charges bylaw in line with these rental fees, or on direction of council on how you would like the rental fees adjusted, so that we can collect fees, because without the bylaw update, we are unable to collect any rental fees. So additionally, in terms of staff allocation, this is a new function area, a new service area for the village. So once council has provided direction on how council and the community envisions using this building in terms of rental, time of day use, types of activities, or programming that would be permitted in the building, and those policies and fee updates are created, then staff in turn can come back to council and provide more information to council on what staffing and or other resources would be required in order to initiate that service. It would be difficult to determine specifics of times and numbers of bodies, without knowing exactly what will be happening in the building, but we're looking at somebody that's going to be handling bookings, if anything, somebody that's, walk through, initiating the contracts, actual day of events. Do we want to have a person here for the day of events? There's a whole myriad of components to that facility rental that we would want to consider and ensure are initiated prior to actual rental of the facility. So I do have a recommendation for council in order to initiate next steps. And there are some additional options as well, should council choose to have some further dialogue about this. So the recommended option is that staff be directed to report to council with a draft policy and fees and charges bylaw update to reflect the recommendations included in the report dated May 3rd, 2024 from the Chief Administrative Officer entitled Anmore Community Hub Facility Use. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Can I get someone to move that? Moved and seconded. I'll open up to questions. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Very happy to see this report. I think a lot of people here we've been flagging a lot of calls, and there's a lot of interest in getting moving on this, but I think we have to recognize that it's a lot. And I do want to commend all of the gathering of this information, because it's a lot, and I think if you don't live in that world, you probably are not aware of the many, many things that we need to consider. I mean, right down to Scotch tape and thumbtacks and staples, and it's quite a bit that we have to think about. So I'm not really sure about the next steps, but I think we need to do a gradual phase-in. And how that looks, I don't know. I do expect we'll want to send anything to each of our committees, but when we do that, I think you need to be very specific about what areas of the building usage each committee. So say public safety, they wouldn't look at the whole bylaw. They would just speak to those related to hours and smoking and safety, and then there would the CC committee has a different view of it. Environment, there would be that, and of course you have recreation, which is a whole different level. I wouldn't want to get too many people diving into areas that they probably don't need to, simply because it will slow it down. And it would be nice to get moving on it. I made a lot of notes that I'm not going to get into, but as far as the recommendation, I don't think it would be fair just to send you off to make a policy without having some conversations, whether it's a committee of the whole or a couple of other things that I considered. Is we want to hear from residents, and there are probably a good number of residents that work in the field. We have a wedding planner here. We have someone who used to have a decor company, was very involved in events all over Vancouver. We have a kind of a supply company that they give games and such, so they may have some different perspectives that maybe staff and other people aren't really aware of, even myself, although I was in the business, but a different side of it. So I mean, maybe that's a good place to start. There's a lot to consider.
Good.
So that is it. I guess we'd have to decide as a group how we move forward, but.
Any other, sorry, any, Paul and then Doug?
Yeah, I think we need to get going on this. A lot of people are asking me about the hall and what it could be used for. You know, I know, and this is a service we've added to our community. We've considered adding to our community. There are going to be some costs, but there's also going to be some cost recovery. So I think the sooner we kind of get something at least started, the better. So I support moving forward on it.
Councillor Richardson.
I'm with Councillor Cryer on one of the things she said, which is a phased approach. So, and I'm also with Councillor Weverink here on to get started, because we have this facility and it's empty all the time, or most of the time. So is it possible that, there's the wedding type thing, 300 people partying, that's a different issue, especially if some outside. But is it easier to start with residents booking this during office hours? Like, I know the old trailers, you couldn't book them during office hours. It could only be outside. So this is almost completely opposite, and the easiest thing might be to start with that. Like, so I'm fine with sending you away to come up with a plan, but I think, it's a hard thing to do and it'll take quite a while. So, can we send you away and say, okay, let's do residents first, office hours, Monday to Friday for this, and make that recommendation, along with we'll take the next piece to the committee of the whole? Would something like that work?
Through the chair, so that's certainly an option to use a phased approach. However, one thing I would not recommend that the boardroom be rented out during the day. Staff does utilize it quite highly for meetings and other things. In terms of this room, phasing an approach to have certain users or groups use the room would not negate us from having to put in place the contracts, the policies, the liability insurance, the business license requirements, if somebody was holding classes or something of the sort. So that definitely would be something that would be easier to implement, but it still would require the framework of those policies to start. So yes, but there's still some work to do, would be my answer.
So my concern is, it's now May, summer's coming. Summer's probably a big time for this to some degree if you want to use Spirit Park. And I can see this going another 3-4 months before things get settled down, which means it's almost a year since it was built before we get going. So to take a bite that would have a lot of the things that will be needed long-term, but some smaller section seems to make a lot of sense to me, so we can get started. I don't know how to recommend that, and I don't know if that makes it easier or worse for you in life, but, you know, I think we should use this room.
So through the chair, I think in order to get the ball rolling with something like that, we would need, as I said, to still set that policy and framework. Staff would need some direction from council on what types of users you are envisioning to use the space, and we would still need to allocate a fee structure to that. If council desires, there is not an ability to collect any fees without an update to our fees and charges bylaw.
Good. Councillor Carr has one more comment.
I missed one question, but I do want to comment one on Doug's phased-in approach. That it does feel like a long time when we've been in this. By the time we get moving on things, it will be close to a year. But I think that you need to understand how complicated it is, and staffing is difficult everywhere. And it will require, even though we won't be doing programming per se, I don't think, it requires a lot of staff time to monitor it, and we really don't know what we don't know because we're into something new. So I do like the idea of phasing it in. I'm wondering, as we work on the website, if eventually that website will have the capability to eventually, I know we're a long way from that, but like Coquitlam Library, you can just go in and you can book a boardroom and they have the rates and all that. It's pretty straightforward. Not that we're straightforward, but will our website be something that we could possibly use?
So through the chair, there is potential to do that. It would require additional software. All of those municipalities that are doing that are using recreation-based software, and there is a cost that is
Obviously.
significant to implement that type of software, but it's definitely something that we could look into for the future.
Yeah, so the phased-in approach is not like during business hours. 4-hour chunks, morning, afternoon, or 8 hours all together. Someone's already here. It's not, I mean, it might be a way to dip your toes, knowing that we would put in place a bylaw that would likely need to be amended.
Yeah, through the chair, you know, it would be dependent on the type of activity. It is easy to say that somebody's just going to come in here for 4 hours and they're going to take care of themselves and come into the facility and leave the facility in sort of the state that it was in. However, we currently don't have staff members that are allocated to sort of that oversight or supervision of those activities, and we definitely could look into how we could support that.
Like, we're not talking tomorrow, we want to have a yoga, but just a, you know, self-sufficient, you know, if we can tack on a cleaning fee, something like that. This is all conversation that we don't need to be doing right here, right now, but always willing to give my 2 cents.
Yeah, through the chair, what I'm hearing is that it's likely that council is not going to be supportive of the recommendation that's on the floor at this time. So perhaps council may want to vote on that recommendation and defeat it, and then bring forward either you know, the recommendation to go to committee of the whole or to the committees to continue this discussion.
I've got some comments to make when you finish. Sure, just quickly, and then I've got comments.
So what I was going to ask you is the recommendation you put on here your preferred approach, because it's going to be you or your staff, and I don't want to get in the way of that by saying, you know, do the shortcut to here and here and here. If this is what you want and believe is the best thing, then I could support it.
Good. Yeah, I just have a few comments. I read through this, and I can tell you quite clearly, it's something that I hear from a lot of residents. And I think the key thing to remember is this is the residents' building, and it's important that they get use of it as soon as possible. And I like the phased-in approach. I did look at the analysis, and I think much more work has to be done. I think as well the existing bylaw needs to be rescinded because it doesn't do anything for what we're wanting to do. I look back at some records, and just to put things in perspective, I was so fortunate to get married in 2017 and use the Port Moody Galleria, which isn't even on this list of things, and I checked the total of what it cost me. And for that one night, it was $1,752.63. So that is 7 years ago. So, you know, this building being even much nicer than that would probably deem well in the $2,000 a night range, I would deem with looking at those comparables. That doesn't include any of the exterior space whatsoever. That's just the inside. So I think some more work needs to be done. I think that it needs to be vetted through especially the CC committee, because of the people that they have on it that, you know, would be able to sort of set some parameters. I do think that we need to get, before summer, people in here, and I think the easy thing is during the day, if they're self-contained, whether it be a yoga class or something like that, that's what I'm hearing a big push for, is some people. And as well, we need to get moving on the RFP downstairs. I've already met with 2 groups of people that want to start looking at possibly putting a bakery or coffee shop in downstairs as well. So we need to get on that. But I think that this should be vetted first through the committees, and see if there's any interest there. I'm not necessarily thinking emergency preparedness or environment or parks, more just the CC to bring it back to council. And then what we may have is we may just maybe have an open house with all those people that are interested in doing some sort of on their own programming to be able to meet in kind of a committee of the whole or some atmosphere like that. So I'm not going to vote in favor of the prescribed recommendation, but my recommendation, I think it's sort of summed up in recommendation number 2, that policy number 93 gets rescinded, and including the policy into newly created facility rental policy that incorporates both space with the Anmore Community Hub, adjacent Spirit Park, and that that may be interested in both, and that setting the same both space will provide clarity and process for both users and staff, and then referred to the committee of
So,
the C&C.
sorry, the recommendation that is currently on the floor is including those recommendations that are listed in the report.
Okay.
So the alternate recommendations would be on page 7 of your agenda, and that would be either to refer to committee of the whole,
Okay.
or to refer to select committees. Of course, council can choose whether all or some of the committees. I will note that further on in the agenda with the committee recommendations, that under Councillor Trowbridge's committee, recreation was something that they wanted to also address and is under the mandate of
Okay.
their committee. So I'm not sure whether you would want to include all or part of those.
Okay, well, we have a recommendation that's been moved and seconded, so I'm going to call the question on it before we move forward to possibly another one. Okay, Councillor Cryer.
Apologies. It does not say in this option that we're rescinding the other 2 policies, does it? Am I missing it in the words? Page 6? Do we
Correct. Through the chair, the recommendations that are numbered throughout the report are the recommendations that are included in the current motion that is on the floor to do the policy work.
So 1, 2, 3, and 4
1,
are
2,
all
3,
part
and
of
4
one.
are included in the current motion that is on the floor, and then the options are outlined page 6 and 7 of the agenda.
Okay.
So the motion is on the floor right now, is that staff be directed to report with the draft policy and fees and charges bylaw update to reflect all of the recommendations. So that would be the recommendations 1 through 4 in the report. So if council wishes to choose some of those recommendations, then certainly we could do that. I don't know in terms of rescinding the report, what value rescinding the report would be, or sorry, rescinding the policies would be without also initiating a new policy at this time.
I just didn't, I was reading option 1 on page 6 at the bottom, but I wasn't
Right.
looking at 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, apologies that that's a
No,
little
no.
confusing.
It's a little confusing.
Apologies.
Question, is it, like, for, as far, always aware of staff being overly busy, is it easier to just do the whole bylaw? Or would it be easier to start with, say, business hours as staff is looking at it?
So the bylaw piece would be the fees and charges bylaw. So that would be setting the fees and charges. So that would be the bylaw piece. The policy piece would be the policy framework to set the criteria for what would be allowed in terms of rental use, what requirements we would have in terms of insurance and other things, and what types of activities would be permitted in terms of use. And then the bylaw would be just, it costs you X amount of dollars to rent this space for each hour. If you are this person, if you are a resident, maybe it's a different fee. If you are a community group, maybe it's a different fee, or maybe it's the same fee for everybody.
Right. I guess I was thinking, is it more complicated to do weekend weddings, everything, or is it easier to start out with a bylaw, a smaller am I making sense? Just through business hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Can you start and just do that? All those things you just mentioned, but just in a smaller, more targeted group.
Through the chair, yeah, I think that that would be something that would be achievable if we had direction in terms of the criteria of what fees you would want to charge. And in the future, if you wanted to charge different fees for different hours or different activities, the bylaw could then be amended accordingly. I think that in terms of the policy, the framework is going to be much the same regardless of the user in terms of our liability insurance requirements, our business license requirements, what we allow, to your earlier comment of thumbtacks and tape. I think that'll be the same regardless of the user. So, yeah.
More manageable doing a smaller part. And then the rest is like a copy and paste. You still can't use your thumbtacks. But for a wedding on a Saturday night, it's going to cost you more. The cleaning is going to be more.
Good. Okay. Well, then if this sort of covers it all, then I'm fine to support this recommendation of moving forward. With some tweaking, it'll have to go on down the road in regards to some of the fees, because I don't think some of the fees are really well captured here, to be honest, in that. So, okay. Call the vote.
So,
go ahead, Karen.
So for clarity, that's the recommendations that are on the floor currently. And does council wish to provide any further comment or direction in terms of different types of users? Or would council want staff to come back with a policy framework and the fees and charges bylaw framework? And then you can say, yes, this fits, no, this doesn't fit. And at least it's a starting point for a discussion.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And then I think we may refer it to a couple of the committees then at that point in time once it gets a little bit more fine-tuned in that, so.
Understood, thanks.
Good, okay, I'll call the question on the.
Sorry, was that a friendly amendment?
Yeah, direction.
There was no amendment. I didn't hear an amendment to that recommendation.
Is that not part of it? Is that what Karen was saying, I thought, or Ms. Elwer?
So what I heard was the motion that's on the floor right now is to approve all the recommendations that were in the report and come back with a policy and fees and charges bylaw update.
Yeah, and that we'll be able to then review at that point in time further. Yeah, yeah, okay, good. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to the future election voting opportunities report dated May 3rd, 2024 from the Manager of Corporate Services attached. Michelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the November 15th, 2022 regular council meeting, council passed the following resolution: that council directs staff to report back to council regarding options accounts for streamlining mail ballot processes and additional voting opportunities, including cost considerations. So this report is to fulfill that resolution. In 2022, the estimated eligible voter turnout for the village was 49.2%. This was significantly higher than the average BC municipal turnout of 29.2%. So that was a very good turnout. In addition to the 2 required in-person voting opportunities, the village also provides a mail ballot opportunity that is an optional provision. However, challenges associated with providing mail ballot voting for a small organization are timing, limited staff resources, and administrative overhead that is required, and the details of that are included in the report. Should council wish to further enhance this voting opportunity, such as allowing for extended timelines, additional opportunities for pickup or drop-off, or designated areas for drop-off options, a dedicated election official would need to be resourced and assigned to this area. And for context, out of the 878 ballots that were cast, only 37 of them were attributed to mail ballots. So there's a lot of overhead for 37 votes. And also for further reference, there are 31 other municipalities and regional districts in BC who do not provide this optional service at all, according to a survey completed by Civic Info in 2022. The village has not historically funded and resourced additional advanced voting opportunities or special voting opportunities, which is consistent with practice in small communities due to the available resources. It should be noted that under the current practice, curbside voting is available on both the advanced and regular voting opportunities if an elector is not able to come into the building for any reason. The financial implications to enhancing this service would significantly increase the cost of an election. Each voting opportunity must have at least 3 election officials present at all times. If the CEO, the chief election officer, is also a member of staff, additional voting opportunities would further reduce the time spent on corporate services. While staff would recommend that a contractor be engaged for running the election, the village was unsuccessful in recruiting somebody to fulfill that role, and the election was administered under existing staff. So there's comments about the extent of communications and civic engagement that was completed, and I think that the turnout is a testament to how well the village did with communications and reaching the electors. So the recommendation is that this report be received for information.
Before we receive it, I just wanted to make a couple comments on this. The last election, I heard from a lot of people, again, the challenge with the mail-in ballots. And from what your report states, there was really no way around that because we had to wait until the there was a chance anybody could withdraw. So the time limits were the time limits on the ballots. That cannot be changed. What I did hear a lot of frustration as well is that people only had the 2 days to vote. Some people were wanting to use the mail-in ballot as a way of voting during the week because they weren't around on the weekend or weren't being available. So, however, now we have a bit of a game changer, and that is with this building. And I know a lot of municipalities offer voting every day during an election cycle. So could we not have an election, a polling station set up sort of in the boardroom that then could be facilitated during that time?
Yeah, absolutely, you could do that. However, as the report states, 3 election officials must be present at all times when the polling station is open, so it would significantly increase the cost of the election.
We could do it just in the mornings, I guess, or something like that, or?
An additional challenge would be recruiting enough election officials to fulfill these roles, as was in 2022.
When it comes to election, to me, I certainly don't want to be too frugal. I want to make sure, and I hear that very loudly from people that didn't get an opportunity to vote and were quite upset because of the debacle with the mail-in ballot. So I think that I would certainly recommend we'll receive the report, but I'm certainly going to be pushing that if this site is being used as an election center during the next election, that as a council we pay those extra funds to have polling to be able to, for residents to be able to done on any day, and that so.
If you would like council to give a recommendation that staff bring back a report on the costs
Sure.
to do that and update the elections bylaw, we could.
That would be great. have someone to move that, to get a report back? Move, second. All those in favor? Oh, if you want to, sorry, open up for conversation, sorry.
Yeah, I think elections are pretty important. We want to make them as accessible as possible. Yeah, I understand there was complications with the mail-in ballots, but maybe there is a something in between, like you know, having 3 times a week that we can vote in this building. You know, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once, you know, whatever. Just to accommodate more people, because people are away during the election period, but they're usually not away during the whole election period. So I'd certainly like to explore all opportunities and, you know, encourage people to run as well. You know, it's important.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you through the chair. I will add that once the mail ballots are available for pickup, there's nothing prohibiting somebody from coming and picking up their mail ballot, filling out their mail ballot, essentially voting, and bringing the mail ballot package back to be received by election staff. You know, for those people that don't find the day convenient, the legislation did change just prior to the last election, that you no longer need to declare that you're going to be out of town during the election. That was a former requirement. Now mail ballot voting opportunities for anybody, any community that offers them, are open to anybody. So if somebody wanted to apply for a mail ballot, pick their mail ballot up, you know, at their own convenience, fill out their ballot, and then return it back before the end of election day, that option also exists under our current structure.
Yeah, I had people that literally picked up the mail ballot, went out to the car, and were told they weren't allowed to. So it was, yeah. Anyway, that's what I was told, so we need to clarify it. So anyway, any other comments? Councillor Richardson.
So I'm just curious, what is the motion on the floor? If the motion is to accept the report with the amendment and have staff report back with potential costs of allowing more voter accessibility, is that what we're currently on?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Now we're on to items of committee of the whole, committees and commissions. So, Ms. Elric.
Thank you. I think Ms. Shell had something to add in terms of the role of committees first, if that's all right.
Michelle.
Okay. So I just wanted to bring up that regarding select communities, what the community charter says, and section 142, that a council may establish and appoint a select committee to consider or inquire into any matter and to report its findings and opinion to the council. At least one member of the select committee must be a council member, and subject to section 2, persons who are not council members may be appointed to a select committee. So council, under this legislation, has established 4 select committees, including the CC, Public Safety, Environment, and Parks and Recreation committees. Each committee has a terms of reference to outline the purpose and mandate, which is in accordance with section 142(1) of the community charter, which is to provide council with advice and recommendations.
Good. Any, so Ms. Elric?
Thank you. So all of the committees have met and gone through their orientation. Just to reiterate Ms. Shell's comments regarding the advisory role of the committees and the role of the committees to be an advisory body to council, not to actually undertake events or activities. So through the first meetings of the committees, there's quite a robust list of either activities or recommendations of items that the committees wish to have council direction to undertake. So I just wanted to comment that a few of these items can be identified in terms of items that are legislated and we have to do. So with that, I would reference you know, the accessibility plan from the CC committee, the emergency preparedness from the Public Safety Committee. There is new legislation being rolled out that we need to comply with. Additionally, there's, I think, bits and pieces from most, if not all, of the committees that are related to the facility discussion that we just had. So we certainly can roll and incorporate in when that goes back to committees once the policy framework is created. And additionally, there are some things that perhaps staff may be able to just provide an update to council and the committees on activities that have already been undertaken or that staff is currently working on to see if any further direction needs to be directed by council. And examples of that would be the fire, in terms of the Fire Smart, we are currently in the midst of applying for a grant opportunity for wildfire protection planning. The Environment Committee, there was some comments about Bear Aware. We have recently, just last summer, started working with Tri-City Bear Aware to enhance our efforts there. I know that our Public Works staff, Scott Donaldson and Allison, have been working with Port Moody staff on trail connections. So we might be able to provide some updates in areas that would be useful to inform some of that request that came back from the committees in order to compile it into a bit more of a manageable list. We might have some answers to the questions that you have. So that would just be my comment. And I'm not sure, Mayor McEwen, if you would like to invite any of the committee members to speak to any of the specific items or
Yeah,
themes from their
I think the
committee.
big thing is that we have limited resources with staff time. And again, the committees are supposed to be following the recommendations of council towards them, as we were talking tonight, even with the facility. I know previous meeting we had Torca actually come to the council meeting to get a referral to go to the actual Parks Committee. So I think it's important that proper protocol and procedure is followed, because again, we don't have the staff time to be able to follow up on a lot of these things. And then as committee chairs, feel free when you do your council's report, say, yeah, as my committee, we talked about this. Could I get a recommendation from council to look into these sort of things would be the appropriate way on doing some of this stuff. So I don't really have too much more to say on it. Any of the committee chairs? Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Yeah, I about fell off my chair when I saw my committee recommendation. So somewhere, what was meant by the conversation was totally lost in translation. And the first thing, thank you both for bringing it up, is I wanted to stress that we're advisory bodies. There's no way I would ever give you 15 things to do. I mean, at most I'll give you one. And it usually takes us a while to figure it out. So in looking at this list, to Ms. Ulrich's point, I think our main focus is getting us up to requirement for the new accessibility laws. So that is the first thing that we're doing. And two things I would say that we'll be working on will be maintaining Anmore's heritage in the stories, as well as bringing back the Dementia Cafe, so dementia workshops. So I would do each year a review of what we did that year and what we were looking at doing in the next year. And they were just like, they came out of brainstorming. So I think every single thing that came out of our brains was written in this recommendation. So too much, and again, I think that I speak more than anyone else at this table about not overburdening staff because they're already overburdened. So I don't know what we need to do to that recommendation, but
I think the appropriate thing is we pass it back on to Ms. Ulrich to review through all of these and see what things are already being, as she has already commented on, what things are already in progress, and then go back to the respective chairs to ask that for these other things, they're going to need a recommendation from council to be able to pursue some of these with limited resources that we have. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's certainly something that's achievable, and,
Yeah.
and like I said, I think we're ticking some of these boxes, and it's just communicating with the committees and council exactly where we are, and we can certainly report back to council. I don't know, we can report to the committees, but if we reported back to council, that would probably be more timely, because I know the committees are on a quarterly cycle now, so whatever council's preference is, we can do either.
Good. Councillor Weber?
So I just want to clarify, I mean, my committee had 3 things that they just wanted to discuss. And you know, to note that we're just discussing these things at this point. You know, say we pick a meeting to discuss increasing bear awareness, and the committee makes some recommendations, it would be to council. It would be under council's purview to refer it to staff and work on it, or to say, look, we're good on the bear stuff, we're going to leave it alone for now. So are you going to you're going to go through all these item by item and comment on them, and then we go to the committees from there on each item as needed? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I certainly could do that, and just for context, well, you know, it's great to have these discussions amongst the committee on areas that the committees want to focus on and want to have dedicated meetings to. That direction should still come through to council. So I think it would be most appropriate for the report to come back to council, and then council could say, yeah, I think that's a great idea. You should have a meeting to talk about development of wildlife corridors. Instead of the committees informing what's coming up to council, it should be the council informing what's going down to the committees. But this is certainly, being that the committees haven't met for some time, it certainly is a good starting point to get that flow going. So I think that's appropriate.
Councillor Richardson?
So just to clarify, I thought the understanding was that council tells committees what to look at. And the way we took the first meeting was, since there's been no discussion at all for years, that we would ask council, can you give us permission to talk about these things? And that's the way it's supposed to go, is my understanding. So how do we get council to look at our thing and then tell us that you can or cannot look at these things? Like, what's the procedure there? Because I'm a little confused now. Do I make that recommendation as part of my report or something? Like,
So
how's it go?
Through the chair, the proper process is, and we have been a little bit fast and loose over the years with the committee structure here, and granted that it has been quite a long period of time since committees had met. Ms. Schell gave the orientation to all the committees, and we thought that this would be a good starting point to start the discussion. However, you are correct in saying that any direction and any activities or information should be coming from council down to the committees. That is the proper way procedurally for the committees to function. If there is no direction coming from council, there is nothing for the committee to consider.
So you'll go through all the lists and then come back. We don't need a recommendation or a motion on that, Michelle?
We could have a recommendation or a motion to have staff report back on capacity to work on, I don't know, that staff report back on the committee recommendations.
Right, what are in play as well, and as well as to staff resources and that. Perfect, good. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. Now on to the mayor's report. I was April 19th, the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department, we went on a tour over in Bowen Island to check out the new fire hall now that it's completed. We were over there and back before lunchtime. It was actually a really good tour. Saw a lot of things that they had worked on in regards to various things and keeping costs down and what the final cost came in. So it'll be, oh, sorry. Before I get into the mayor's report, didn't have it in my notes. I wanted to ask Ms. Mickelson just to give a report in the mayor's report about the public input session this last Saturday.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank
Nope.
you for waving. I need a buzzer or something.
No problem. Have I got sound? People here? Okay, great. So I'm here tonight to talk about community engagement for Anmore South, and I'll be getting into a little bit about the open house we had this past Saturday. But I'm also here to talk about the principles we're working to uphold. So first and foremost, community engagement is meant to be inclusive and to provide a respectful discourse and discussion and input from everyone in the community. So my role in this project is to work with the village and to provide as many opportunities as possible that we can get that kind of input, particularly for the Anmore South project. So basically our goal is to make it as easy as possible for our community to be heard and then share what we learned and tell you how that'll inform next steps. But for this to work, the process to be productive and to allow for that constructive input, it must be based on respectful dialogue. So personal attacks where individuals are named specifically or by their position are not okay. This includes posts that question a person's integrity, their character, or ethics. As well, any comments that could be considered intolerant of a person's race, culture, appearance, gender, age, etc. are unacceptable and will be removed from the input collected. So why am I raising this tonight? So after the open house on Saturday, I learned that there was a post on Anmore Conversation that named me personally, as well as a village employee's name. The comment about me said that my professional ethics were compromised because I was being paid for the work I'm doing for the village. I found that somewhat confounding, as most of us who work for a living are actually paid for the work we do. And it has absolutely nothing to do with our professional ethics. So I'm proud of my professional standards, and as an internationally accredited business communicator, I'm also committed to adhering to my professional ethics. In that same post, a relatively new member of the village staff is also named personally in a negative context, saying he shared misinformation. He explained that a special study area provides opportunities for different uses like the proposed application, and that is accurate. It's okay to disagree with his statement, but it doesn't make it misinformation, and it does not make it okay to put his name out on Facebook and call him out in that way. So when reviewing the post, I noted that almost all of the content was focused on targeting specific people, either by name or position. It was not about providing input on the application, and even if there was no intention to cause harm, when you post names and question an individual's personal or professional integrity, you are hurting people. You're hurting their reputation with your comments. Comments like these do not contribute to gaining insight into how residents feel about the application, topics they want to discuss in more detail, what they want council to consider, or other input about the OCP application and neighborhood plan. In another disturbing situation, a member of the village team working at the open house on the weekend noticed a post on one of the boards that included a racist comment about the owner of the property. We removed that post as soon as we saw it, but unfortunately we don't know how long it was up or how many people saw it before we caught it and took it down. Speaking for myself, I find all of this extremely upsetting. It frankly hurt to see my personal and professional ethics attacked. I was angry and disappointed to see the character attack on a village staff member, one of a very small team of people here who work incredibly hard to serve this community. And I'm absolutely horrified by the racist attack. So if you're aware of wrongdoing by an individual, so if you're genuinely aware of wrongdoing and it's backed by evidence, whether it's compromised ethics, conflict of interest, or any other serious matter related to the village staff, council, or contractors, you should absolutely report it, but make sure of your facts. Comments that involve unsupported allegations, attack someone's character, or are clearly designed to suggest wrongdoing without any facts to back them up will be removed. Again, if you are aware of a legitimate issue, report it so it can be investigated. We initiated this community engagement process so we could hear from residents about the application and neighborhood plan. and I recognize that there are differing opinions about the current application for Anmore South. That's why we're doing this comprehensive process to provide opportunities for input. We're planning many more opportunities for community engagement in the coming months, and I'm asking this community to share input, but stay away from those derogatory comments about people. It's never been okay to do that. It's just become easier in the world of social media, and it's also worse because it's published in a public forum. So I know it's possible to have different opinions and still listen respectfully to each other. I observed this at the open house this past weekend when I sat down with two women who are local residents, and they were on opposite sides of the fence. One is in favor of the application, one is against, but they did agree on two things. They would really like to be able to talk and understand why they each held their opinions, and they also agreed that discussion is important, but it should never be personal. That's good engagement. So I also know that for this to work, for us to have good conversations throughout this process, it can't just be me asking everyone to keep discussion respectful and considerate of others. This only works if we all agree to these standards. So I'm asking Anmore residents, if you see personal attacks being posted, remind people that we want a respectful process, that it's not okay. And if you're participating in any of our community engagement processes and you see or hear personal or racial attacks or bullying or any other disrespectful behavior, please let us know right away. We can do better, Anmore. I'm asking for your help to make this a constructive, productive engagement process where we can all hear from each other in the community. I'd also like to say that I am feeling discouraged right now by recent events, but I do want to end on a positive note because we did have 150 people join us at that open house this past weekend, and we received lots of input on post-it notes and comment cards. We also had village engagement team members circulating around the various zones taking notes, and the purpose of this open house was to share information and answer questions about the OCP amendment application and neighborhood plan being considered, as well as the review process, and we got a lot of that. We're also looking for general input from the community, or in particular, we asked about what topics would people like to discuss in more detail, and we got some of that. So we're working on pulling together the input into a summary report that we will share, and this report will reflect key themes of what we learned, questions being asked, and input on what's coming next. We're using the notes taken at the various stations and the post-it notes shared by the community, but I want to be clear, this is not quantitative research. Post-it notes are not a poll. Individuals participating could put up as many post-it notes saying the exact same thing if they wanted to. This is not about conning up post-it notes and coming back and saying, here's how many people. This is about understanding the key themes and sharing information with the community. So I really want to thank those who attended the open house. I enjoyed connecting with residents and hearing their perspectives, and overall I felt it was a positive experience. I also want to say we launched a new community engagement site to provide the community with information and as a way to share comments and questions throughout this process. This new Have Your Say Anmore site has display boards from the past weekend and other information about the project. So if you weren't able to be at the open house, please go and check it out. We're already seeing some questions and comments being posted. I do want to say there was some confusion about who is managing the Have Your Say site, and my thanks go to the residents who reached out to me directly for clarification. I appreciate you checking with us directly to ask who will be monitoring and administering the site. That is going to be done by the village. So the village asked Icona Properties Limited to arrange for a license for the community engagement site, as they're paying for all this work that the village is doing to review the application. And they went and they set that up for us. And so now that Have Your Say site is ready to go and is going to enable people to engage with us in between the other opportunities where we're holding things like open houses and workshops. So I encourage you to check it out. The URL is really easy to remember. It's haveyoursayanmore.com. And it's going to be a great site where you can share input and also just keep track of what's going on. So we hope that this tool provides a useful way of our community to engage. And as next steps, we're working on the development of small group workshops for more in-depth discussions on the topics residents indicated they would like included, as well as the neighborhood plan and its terms of reference. And when the details are finalized, we're going to share this schedule with the community and we hope that people will sign up and participate. So I truly hope that we can all work together to move forward with this engagement in a way that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. Yeah, again, as a member of this council and as a resident, it was the first time I actually went to one of the open houses. I had not attended any of the ICONA-sponsored ones. I stayed away from them because as a council, we're here and we're going to be, we're going to be asking for information. We're going to be reviewing all the information that comes forward. So I was here right at opening at 11 o'clock. I was hoping to get in and out just so I could see what was going on and support the village and the staff here. I was here about 40 minutes, and I tried to keep my time here as quickly as possible because, again, this is a big process. But I was troubled a little bit afterwards by receiving notice from some residents saying that council member was putting Post-its up on the thing. Again, I guess they have their right to do that as residents. But again, we're going to be evaluating this proposal as it goes. I certainly wouldn't be something that I would have done because, again, I'll be having a say as we move on. And I was trying to get in and out as quickly, but I tell you, I thought it was very well done, and I compliment staff completely in regards to this. I thought the separation of two, and I thought the questions that were being asked when I was there, great turnout. I was actually a little surprised that there wasn't more than 150 people, to be completely honest, but and that, so anyway, I just yeah, great job, and sad, but thank you, Therese, for making those comments, because I think we can do better, and I think we should do better in that, so thank you. I'll continue on with my mayor's report. So on April 19th, we did a tour of the completed Bowen Fire Station over on Bowen Island as the trustees. Got some great ideas, talked to the people there, find out what the finalized budget was, some of the things that they would like to have, and what they don't want to, what they could have changed. Monday, on the 29th of April, I had a Port of Vancouver meeting, some kind of just facts in regards to how busy our port is. We do 332 sailings for cruise ships. About 1.25 million passengers come in and out of Vancouver for the Port of Vancouver. In bulk, our biggest export is coal at 42.6 million metric tons, and then potash, grain, and petroleum products are substantially behind that. Every car coming from Asia, it comes through the Port of Vancouver, and last year we brought in 454,151 cars. So for the Canadian market. Yeah, it's very interesting, but they're running out. Our biggest major trading partners for our total is China, Japan, South Korea. Imports are China, South Korea, United States, and exports are China, Japan, South Korea. So there's 3,000 foreign vessels come into the port on a yearly basis. So just some trivia here in regards to the port. April 30th, I had with Mr. Boyd discussion with infill with a local resident who's gone through the process, ways to offer more clarity and also ways to possibly expedite the process. We had a great discussion. Again, infill in its infancy when we first brought it in has seen many changes because it needed to change to be able to facilitate what we really wanted to do in the village. Last week from May 1st to 3rd, I was up at Whistler for the Lower Mainland Local Government Association. I was there on behalf of Metro Vancouver. I had a meeting with BC Hydro, a round table. This province is really lacking in electricity, and there's a lot of areas in the Lower Mainland that are waiting 3 to 5 years to be able to get electricity to them. It's a big problem, and with Site C not even coming on, the other big issue is with the building code now. You have to do total load on the houses. So there is some houses in North Van that are being built. The mayor informed us that are needing 400, 500, 600 amp services, and the reason for that as well is the fact that you put 2 charging stations at your house, that's 100 amp service right then and there. So there is some big issues coming with BC Hydro, so they had this roundtable to discuss with us. So on Saturday night, I was at the Eagle Ridge Hospital Foundation Gala, raised almost $500,000 to the Eagle Ridge Hospital for 2 I guess, imaging devices for doing orthopedic surgery. They're both about $250,000 each. Great night. A lot of local residents from Anmore and Belcarra that were there, and a lot of people volunteering to make such a great event. It's a great hospital, and having all the doctors out there to support the cause was really amazing. Then Sunday, I was joined by my colleagues, Councillor Weberink and Councillor Cryer at the Hike for Hospice down at Port Moody. And then afterwards, we went up to Camp Sassmet for their open house. So that's all I have. I'll move it over to Councillors' reports. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I went to the Port Coquitlam Volunteer Awards, which is always very exciting. That was a couple of weeks ago. I also attended the Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence Awards. As Mayor McEwen mentioned, I too was at the Lower Mainland Local Government Association Conference in Whistler, representing Anmore, and Hike for Hospice, Sassmet Outdoor Center, which I had never been to. We had a great private tour, the board chair, that was great. I had hiked around the lake many times, but didn't actually know it was there. It's a great facility. I too attended the open house with the husband. Very well attended, had some great conversation with folks. And tomorrow's my big day. It's McHappy Day. Last year I was angling for the drive-through and Councillor Glenn Pollock got it, so I will give you an update. But I better be at that drive-through from noon to 12:30 tomorrow. The one on in Poco by the ICBC. Right there. Oxford Connector. So, super excited. Thank you.
Any other? Oh, Councillor Weberink.
Yeah, just quickly, I did the Bowen Island Fire Department new fire hall tour. We've toured it before. We toured it when it was being built, and we wanted to see it finished and sort of get some insight into what the challenges were, what they would have done different, you know, before we, but it's almost the exact facility I think that we would need here up in Anmore. I also did a zero waste tour. We toured, as part of my duties on the zero waste committee for Metro Van, we toured the Vancouver landfill, the waste incinerator, and the new recycling center in Coquitlam. That was very interesting. Hike for Hospice was great. I did it last year as well. And then the Anmore South open house, I showed up for about an hour, chatted with people, was kind of a fly in the wall. You know, I think it's great that we're doing this engagement, and comments on the stickum board. Well, I heard there was a guy, just sitting there writing stickums and sticking them. So, when we start to look at residents' input, we need to validate that. We need to. I remember when we did the consultation for this village hall. There were these comments, and you could just tell that somebody wrote 7 in a row, and it was the same person. I need to know. I don't need to hear from one person saying 25 times that they're against it. I need to know if there's 25 people against it, that's different. So I don't know how we're going to validate that, but that's going to be very important feedback for us. So, stickum notes don't mean a whole lot to me. And that's about it.
Councillor Richardson.
Just one quick thing. I'm the chair of the Health and Safety Committee. We have me and 4 others, so our quorum is 3. And the last meeting, we were down to 3, and then one guy didn't show up. And luckily, it rained, so the guy who was going to his son's baseball team did show up. So we had quorum, but it was iffy. There's room for 2 more people. I would prefer to have 2 more, not 1 more, because 1 more makes quorum 4 people, and 2 more makes it 4, and I have better odds. So if you're interested in health and safety, woohoo, come join me, and I think 2 people, please. So if you're interested, put your name in, and we'll get it done. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Move over to the Chief Administrative Officer's report. Ms. Albert.
Thank you. Just a couple quick items. Utility bills have been sent out, so they are due on May 17th. So there's several options, online payments, drop-off, or pay in the Village Hall. Additionally, we are currently just at the beginning of Emergency Preparedness Week, and the village has just launched alertable platform for receiving critical emergency notifications. So information related to that is on our Facebook, on the village website, and on our email notifications. It's very easy to sign up for the app, so I encourage everybody to do that. Thank you.
Good. Okay, we have some information item. Oh, sorry. Councillor Cholbridge, we're going to go back to the councillor's report. Sorry.
I know.
He's
I'm
usually
not
so quiet.
I'm not terribly relevant, but that's fine. It's fine. My feelings aren't hurt. It was. I dropped in for about half hour, the same kind of thing on the open house on Saturday, and it was really encouraging to see people wanting to get involved. I noticed the similar things that you noticed, Therese, and a lot of the same rhetoric that finds itself on Facebook pages and so on, that is really the same old song being sung by the same singers. It wasn't a deterrent to me. That stuff gets filtered out. I'm interested in legitimate, both positive and negative, but legitimate input, not sort of, I hate everything, I don't want this, I can't be bothered with that. So I think it was a useful day. And to Councillor Wevering's point, we're not going to add up a bunch of sticky notes and make a decision. So, more to come.
Ms. Mickelson, did I forget you as well? A little bit on my mind these days. It's been a busy day and a half.
I just wondered if I could just quickly, because I want there to be clarification, that we're at no point in a stage right now where we're counting people's position on things. We are so far from that. We've barely started. It is literally, we had note takers and post-it notes and comment cards. We are literally just collecting key themes and answering questions. We're a long way from anything else.
Good. Thank you. Haven't forgotten anybody. Okay, we're gonna finish off here. Okay, and just to let everybody know, we do have to go back into an in-camera meeting after the meeting, so we'll wrap up fairly quickly here. Some information items, some committee, commissions, and board minutes. General correspondence received from the District of North Van, letter from the Lung and Transplant Housing Support, and the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief. I'll go into public question period. We have one written submission, which in essence is asking about the Anmore Times not being available at the counter in the office. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So the village is continuing, focusing on encouraging community members to look at the village and the village's communication tactics as a source of valid information related to the village business. And with that, the village will not be promoting this publication or any other outside publication sources.
Good, good. Any other questions in public question period before we go into back into our in-camera?
Jurgen Dirkten, 1815 A East Road. Pertaining to the Anmore Times, question number one really is, why didn't you read the question from that was submitted? Normally, protocol is to read the question. So you take it into consideration to read it or not to read it?
Yep.
So you okay, thank you. I'm going to follow up with that in mind, and I'm going to be kind of general in my approach, if you don't mind. Does council know the different meanings of the word voluntary?
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm asking you, do you know the meanings of the word voluntary?
Is this a
It's pertaining to the Anmore Times, which is
That's
a
not part of-
voluntary
No,
product.
it's not part of village. Could you move on to a different question?
It is,
please? I'll ask you one more time
democracy,
before we'll move on.
excuse me,
I'm
but
going to ask you one more time, or I will. We'll
I'm
just,
asking you a question, and I'm also trying to assert that democracy is essential to the village. So it is village business.
Okay, I'm going to. Do you have another question? I'm going to ask you to move on, please.
I'll ask two questions. What is the point of constraining a voluntary publication? Shouldn't the village be supporting its volunteers? Thank you.
Any other questions?
Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. Can you hear? I wondered if any staff or elected representative had seen this very interesting article in Saturday's Vancouver Sun this past Saturday, May 4th. The headline being, "Emission Spruing Lawn Equipment Harms the Environment," report says. And I assume that Mayor McEwen is maybe familiar with this because there's a report that's going to be reviewed by Metro Vancouver's Climate Committee actually this Thursday, so in 2 days. And that report is going to say that up to 600,000 units of small non-road equipment are generating half as much health-harming pollutants as the nearly 1.5 million light-duty vehicles in our region. So this report applies to, Kim, can you hear me okay? You're looking enough? Okay. Thank you. And so anyway, it applies to us, as part of the Metro Vancouver region. The report actually recommends, Mayor McEwen, have you seen the report yet?
I'm not on the Climate Action Committee.
Okay, but
so I
do you
haven't
get...
seen any of it. So do you have a question,
Yes,
Ms. Maloney?
yes, it's coming. The report recommends transitioning to electric equipment with actions such as pushing the provincial government for financial incentives and rebates for personal and professional use, and to study effective battery charging strategies and the performance of electric equipment. Vancouver has actually already begun switching from their gas-powered equipment to lower zero-emission alternatives as the equipment reaches its end of life. That transition is expected to be completed actually by next year. And it talks about how electric equipment is growing in popularity. This is from the report, availability and performance, and has the benefit of reducing harmful emissions and noise. The
I'm
Metro.
just going to ask, could you get to the question?
Question,
please?
yes. So the question is, will Anmore be participating in this initiative?
Already has started. Part of our public works has already switched over to some electric tools and appliances.
So we are already participating. Oh, yes.
Well, yeah, they have. I saw the electric chainsaw the other day, and I was quite taken back by it. I thought it worked pretty good.
Okay. Would anyone like this article?
I'll probably see it in a board and brief after it's been
See it in the
published.
board package. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. And I'm delighted that we're starting to switch over from gasoline-powered, emission, dangerous, harm environment and health-harming equipment.
I suppose the comment that I would make would be operations will transfer over to applicable equipment.
Sorry?
So operations look to change over equipment when applicable and reasonable for the practice of work. So they're not actively looking to change everything to electric, but when they review something and it's applicable, then they would move over to electric.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Greg Moore. I just have a question. Mayor, you read out a question earlier. What is the council procedures on question period at the end of the meeting? Can we email in our questions and you'll read them all out? Or do we have to attend? Like, I'm not sure the procedure.
I would pass it on to Ms. Shell. Thanks.
Through the chair, at the beginning of the agenda package, on the face, you'll see a note that says written submissions directed to council for consideration under public input or public question period may be submitted to me at rhonda.shell@anmore.com no later than 12 noon on meeting days. And these are circulated to council prior to the meeting. They are not read into the minutes.
Oh, thanks. I probably should read that part of the agenda and not just jump down here. Thanks.
Okay, Motion to adjourn. Moved, second, all those in favor? Carried, thank you, and we have to, again, go over into the other room and finish off our in-camera.